You're watching Local News 8 at 5. Local people, local news.
Good evening, everyone. After 6 months of waiting, we're finally getting answers about the Pocatello paving controversy.
Today, a city-commissioned audit was released, finding the city did, in fact, use city equipment and workers for other cities' road projects.
Local News 8's Luke Jones is live in our Pocatello newsroom with the latest on that. Luke.
Well, this audit is dated December 22nd, but we're getting our first look at it today. And in essence, it says the city did, in fact, spend at least $15,700 on labor for other cities' road projects. From the beginning, the mayor said he didn't authorize this, and today the audit says it couldn't confirm who did.
There was a lot of confusion. You can tell who went and who spoke to who when it came to doing work on outer areas of the city. The mayor and council, we were not informed.
And according to that audit, there was insufficient evidence to show any of the assets were misappropriated. Coming up at 6, why the mayor says this won't happen again. Live at the Pocatello newsroom, I'm Luke Jones.
All right, it's still kind of mysterious. Thank you, Luke. You can find out what work did take place and when if you go to our website, localnews8.com.
Local News 8 has learned an Air Medical Transportation Service is moving its base from Ermac to Driggs. Air Methods Corporation said it would move its helicopter operations to Driggs Reed Memorial Airport, but its airplane would stay in Idaho Falls. Ermac says the move would benefit patients and save lives due to location, allowing faster response times. For Ermac's full response to the move, head to our website, localnews8.com.
And time to check in with First Alert's chief meteorologist, Michael Coates. He's got our forecast, Mike.
And Carol, some of us have been stuck in the soup all day long. I'm talking about fog. That low cloud cover has been hanging over portions of Bear Lake County. I've also seen portions across eastern Idaho around Mud Lake stuck in the fog and the soup all day long. And Stanley's seen this neat picture that I got earlier this afternoon. You can see some of that low-hanging cloud cover up there around Stanley and the sun right overhead over the high cloud cover. Bloomington, this is what it looked like just about an hour ago in the Bear Lake area there. Yeah, fairly low visibility, also a little bit of that freezing fog. Marsh Valley, kind of a half and half picture. You look to the left there, you're seeing some of that cloud cover, but you look to the right, you're seeing more sunshine. We have a freezing fog advisory and only just a few spots in our area under the advisory. That's for Bear Lake County, portions of Power County, Cassia County, and around Stanley, still getting a freezing fog advisory here for tonight and tomorrow. Right now, Idaho Falls at 29 degrees, 37 in Pocatello, and you look at Montpelier, they're into the 20s with that fog. I'll have more for you coming up later in the show. For now, I'll send it back over to Carol and Jay.
Now at 5. Officials say the deadly attack Wednesday on the satirical French newspaper Charlie Hebdo has claimed the lives of at least 12 people in Paris, and it appears to be a well-planned assault by trained militants.
It was clearly an execution.
Tonight, we're learning from U.S. law enforcement officials that both suspects in the Paris newspaper terror attack were in the U.S. database of known or suspected terrorists and also on the no-fly list.
This new information is coming just as authorities in France are hunting down the two brothers suspected of the attacks. Those attacks killed 12 people at that magazine. Sunland Safadis has the very latest now on the investigation.
As the massive manhunt in France continues, the trail is still hot. The search centered on these brothers. But after 2 days, both are still free, armed, and dangerous. This morning, a big lead. The suspects were spotted here at a gas station just north of Paris. The attendant called police, reportedly telling them he saw the suspects. They had threatened him and stolen gas and food. Police are now focused on the French village of Longpont, about 6 miles away from the gas station. Checkpoints are set up, helicopters and police convoys are surveying the area.
We may be facing a new wave. It's probably not the end of a terror attack. We are ready to face it. We will fight. And fighting is aiming these people, getting them to jail.
Police sources say the brothers were known to French authorities before the attack. The younger brother, Sharif, was convicted in 2008 for being part of a jihadist recruitment ring that sent fighters to Iraq. It's still unclear, though, whether they had ties to any terrorist group. Here in the U.S., intelligence agencies are searching databases and evaluating their own high-priority targets to see if there are any links to the suspects. Attorney General Eric Holder will travel to Paris this Sunday for meetings on the terror threat. Sunland Safadi for KIFI Local News 8.
Meanwhile, today, in a separate incident, a police officer was shot and killed in a southern suburb of Paris. The attacker was dressed in all black, similar to the same attackers at the Charlie Hebdo newspaper.
Authorities at this point say they haven't established a link between Wednesday's Charlie Hebdo attack and the shooting today. A Pocatello man is in jail tonight after being charged with 5 different crimes over just a 2-day period. Chris Cole is in the Pocatello newsroom with more on this. So, Chris, this is really pretty unusual. What happened here?
So, Jay, there were 3 investigations happening all around the same time when one of the officers took in a suspect, and then the other 2 officers with the other investigations found their suspect as well. Now, this man, Timothy James Utley, was arrested last night. He was charged with arson, injury to property, burglary, stalking, and aggravated battery. He's currently in the Bannock County Jail, has not posted bond, and police say he was initially charged with the 1 crime, but when officers investigating other crimes came on duty, that's when they charged him with more.
The shift supervisors will send information out to the other shifts regarding who was arrested on their shift. Obviously, it's a lot easier for them at that point to go ahead and make contact.
Now, coming up at 6, we'll walk you through exactly what happened, included an aggravated assault charge, and everyone is fine with that, but he's also charged with causing damage to a house and setting a car on fire. Live in the Pocatello newsroom, I'm Chris Cole.
Thank you, Chris. Defense attorneys are fighting to stop the show Cold Justice from airing tomorrow. They're afraid the show will impact the decade-old Norrie Jones murder case before it gets brought to trial. Today, 6th District Magistrate Rick Carnali met with the authorities and the attorneys to discuss their appeal from yesterday's ruling. On Wednesday, the judge struck down the appeal, and the show is scheduled to air tomorrow night on TNT. Cold Case is an investigative show that looks into cold cases and recently came to Pocatello to help police speed up the Norrie Jones case, and it did lead to the arrest of a suspect, Brad Comfer. Attorneys representing the TV program say the only time the Supreme Court will rule in favor of prior restraint would be in extreme cases.
There may be an instance someday that justifies doing this, but it would be akin to putting a chain of events in motion that would create a nuclear holocaust. Instead, what the Supreme Court has said is, look, there are less restrictive means to address the concerns that a criminal defendant raises.
For more information on the ruling in this case, you can go to our website at localnews8.com.
A Twin Falls woman is facing serious charges after stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from her company. Dawn Marie Orr is charged with 5 felony counts involving $530,000 missing from the College of Southern Idaho. Court documents filed yesterday say Orr has been issued a felony summons. School officials learned of the embezzlement in July after Orr told her employer she had taken the money and had so much guilt she just couldn't live with it any longer. She blames a gambling problem. School officials say Orr had a key to the vault room where the college's safe was typically left open during business hours.
Today, the Department of Energy is facing some pricey fines after it failed to remove nuclear waste from the INL by a December 31st deadline. The Idaho Department of Environmental Quality will charge the DOE $1,200 each day for each of the 3 tanks filled with that nuclear waste, and $6,000 after July 1st. The DEQ says the Energy Department needs to treat the radioactive waste in a timely manner before it erodes its storage bins and seeps into the earth.
Liquid waste pose more of a risk to human health and the environment than solid waste. It's regulated because of both its radioactive and its hazardous properties, and if those tanks were to leak, the waste could migrate to the soil and eventually reach the aquifer.
Clough says the Energy Department is already starting building its new treatment facility and hopes it'll start to have its first phase of testing done by the end of this week.
A man caught in an enticement sting killed himself when Boise police moved in to arrest him. Investigators say the man was 37-year-old Kirk Wilkinson of Boise. In tonight's Hot Topic, many are wondering why police chose a heavily populated area to catch the predator. Glenn Beebe tells us detectives from the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force say they never expected things to take this type of turn.
Investigators were expecting when they began a sting operation looking for people who were trying to entice underage children online. Those who work next to where the incident occurred say this is not the first sting operation they've seen.
We don't really normally get the chance to know what happens, but it seems to be this type of scenario just about every time that it does happen, but it only happens very rarely.
A deputy posted an ad on Craigslist back in mid-November posing as a 13-year-old girl, and this was supposed to be the sting coming to a close. Deputies say the man agreed to meet in this parking lot for what he thought would be a sexual encounter with a 13-year-old. Instead, he eventually spotted deputies and then tried to take off in his car. The man tried to get away down this alley, but investigators say they were able to box him in right about here. Deputies got out of their car, and as they approached him, they noticed that he was rustling around through his vehicle. That's when the man pulled out a gun and shot himself in the head. Deputies say they were about 30 feet away from the car when the man pulled the trigger. They say they did pull their guns when they saw the man was armed, but none of them fired any shots. Investigators say this is a very rare occurrence and note they always keep safety in mind when doing these types of operations in public.
We always identify locations that we can mitigate those risks to the public and to our officers, and so we take that into account every time we plan one of these investigations.
Captain Bartlett could not comment on the enticement investigation itself, but they do hope to release more details on this case in the coming week.
Authorities say this is a good reminder that parents need to monitor their kids' internet use and talk to them about never meeting with people they don't know in person.
Should police have chosen a populated area to carry out this sting, or should they maybe have chosen someplace a little more quiet? We'd love to know what you think. You can go to our Facebook page and weigh in on the conversation.
New State Superintendent Sherry Ibarra held her first press conference in office earlier this week, but one education group says they are still left in the dark. Before she took office, Ibarra didn't give away many details about her plans for education in Idaho. And during her first press conference, she told the media she still wants to hold off on specifics. Penny Sir heads up the Idaho Education Association, and she says the group is concerned by how few details Ibarra has given about her priorities and policies.
She's still pretty superficial. She hasn't really gone into depth yet about what her plans are. So, you know, we're just watching and waiting.
Coming up at 6, find out specifically what the IEA says it wants to know on how Ibarra plans to tackle certain issues and the stance they are taking on the little information she has given so far. Governor Otter says he will ask the legislature to restore funding for public schools back to pre-recessional levels. Otter won't talk about specifics of his proposed budget either, but he did say it would be outlined in the State of the State on Monday. There is still no consensus on other pending issues in the legislature like the indigent care system and transportation funding.
If you're interested in being registered to vote in Wyoming and you haven't done so, you might get kicked off the list. Registered voters who didn't cast a ballot in November's general election are now receiving notices in the mail. State election director says it's an effort to keep the state's voter registration list accurate and up to date. She says an estimated 95,000 voters across the state are going to receive these notices of pending cancellation of their registration. People who want to stay on the registered list should return that notice by mail or contact their county clerk. The cost and timeline to complete a renovation and expansion of the Wyoming State Capitol is still pretty uncertain. A contractor says officials won't see a guaranteed maximum price for that project until June or July. State leaders expressed concern that some workers will be moving to temporary locations before the anticipated cost is realized. The legislature approved spending $259 million over the next several years for these renovations.
Of course, the capital of Idaho and
We've
Boise
done that.
kind of been there, done that same kind of thing. It was kind of a hassle, but
yes, it was.
Looks pretty nice now. Well, a showdown could soon be coming to Capitol Hill. We'll tell you why after the break.
And an Arctic freeze across the country causing real big issues. We're going to be right back.
Cheryl Honus, Jade Hildebrandt, and First Alert Chief Meteorologist Michael Coates. You're watching Local News 8 at 5. Local people, local news.
In national news tonight, get ready for a showdown in Washington. Newly sworn-in Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Obama are setting themselves up for a political battle. ABC's Karen Travers looks at some of the reforms they're expected to fight over that could affect your way of life.
President Obama hit the road today to sell his State of the Union priorities. He announced a cut in mortgage insurance premiums on federal loans with the goal of making home ownership more affordable and attractive for new buyers.
We want to make sure that everybody has that access to that piece of the American dream.
But back in Washington, Republicans were revving up their engines.
I said we'd fight it tooth and nail when we had new majorities in the House and Senate, and I meant it.
The 114th Congress has only been in office for 3 days, but the White House has already issued 2 veto threats. Today, a Senate committee moved forward on the controversial Keystone Pipeline, putting the bill closer to a vote by the full Senate. The nearly 1,200-mile pipeline would run from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. Opponents say it could cause devastating environmental damage in the states it runs through, but supporters say it will boost U.S. energy independence and the economy.
We're asking the President again today to do that by working with us to end the gridlock and get this job-creating infrastructure project moving.
The White House said this week the president would veto a Keystone bill if it hits his desk. Supporters of the legislation acknowledge they don't have enough votes to overcome that threat.
And no surprise, President Obama will veto any legislation that makes changes to his health care law. But that doesn't mean Republicans aren't going to go ahead and try. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
In other national news, it was a big month for gun sales in the U.S. last month. The FBI says more than 2.3 million background checks were performed in December. That's up from about 2 million during the same time in 2013. The background checks are the most reliable measure of gun sales. The December numbers cap a year where gun sales grew strongly over the last 3 months.
The FCC is thinking about making your broadband internet service faster. FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler is proposing a new standard defining broadband as providing a minimum speed of 25 megabits per second. The current standard, just 4 megabits. Wheeler said the current standard just can't cover today's high-quality voice, data, graphics, and video. A recent report suggests the average download speed in the U.S. is 11.5 megabits per second. For some folks across the country, going outside is not even an option right now. Frigid temperatures and blustery winds are making the cold unbearable, and in some cases forcing kids to stay home. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez is telling us how people are handling it.
When the temperature drops so low that fountains freeze in Florida, you know cold doesn't begin to describe how they're feeling farther north.
It's uncomfortable. I hate it. I can't wait for spring.
More than half the country is dealing with this brutal blast of Arctic air, with record-breaking lows from New England to the Gulf Coast. Wind chills in Chicago and elsewhere dropping to 15 to 25 degrees below zero.
I would much rather have 6 or 8 inches of snow rather than what we're going to be facing.
Not a snow day, but a cold day for more than 1 million students nationwide whose schools closed today.
Kind of mixed feelings, you know, but being safe is the best thing.
And safety is also a big concern for people who work outside, including firefighters in New Jersey whose battle with flames turned into a serious struggle with ice. And in parts of the country that haven't dug out from the snow earlier this week, driving today is especially dangerous.
The roads are sheer ice.
You know, this makes me appreciate spring.
So many of us feel the same, though it is expected to warm up a bit tomorrow. Over the next few days, some areas have more snow in the forecast. Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News, New York.
Well, we've kind of been there, done that, Mike, but right now it's fairly average or even mild for this time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, we're getting this mid-January thaw, but we're expecting to get back to normal as we close out the month heading into February. And I'm tracking some snow and rain for this weekend coming up next.
Now, your first alert weather with Chief Meteorologist Michael Coates.
Seems like we're locked in this pattern for the rest of the week, and we're talking about it, how we're just going to keep that high pressure going at least until the weekend. And then by the weekend, we might shake off a little bit of the inversion, but then it looks like that high pressure ridge is going to reassert itself back in here after the weekend. 29 right now in Idaho Falls, We're only a couple degrees off from the dew point at the airport, and we're already starting to see some of this valley fog reforming. Low cloud cover and fog coming back in here with winds at around 5 to 6 miles an hour. So the winds are staying pretty light. That's allowing for that fog development. Farm Bureau Cam and Pocatello, beautiful shot here at the sunset. 37 degrees at the airport, and again, very close to the humidity and dew point levels there. And we're once again running into a bit of this patchy area fog as we go overnight through tomorrow morning. And notice that the freezing fog advisory is only in a few spots around the region. That's because the fog is expected to stay pretty thick in these areas for tonight, but we'll still look for a chance of fog all across Idaho and Wyoming tonight through tomorrow morning. So portions of the central Idaho mountains around Stanley, not really in Chalice, but everything west of Chalice in Custer County. And they got Power County, Cassia County, Bear Lake County, all of Bear Lake County under the freezing fog advisory for tonight. Let me take you right over to Vipercast, still anchored with this ridge of high pressure. It's not going anywhere. We're going to keep it in place, at least for the next couple of days. And then by the weekend, it breaks down a little bit here. And then we're going to get that ridge building back in, getting into next week. So tonight through tomorrow afternoon, yeah, that low cloud cover and patchy fog possible. And then you also have some high-level cloud cover at times. Then we get into Saturday. Saturday, we're going to bring in a mainly cloudy sky for everybody. And we're starting to pick up on some moisture. But let me show you where it's going to be hitting here. Saturday night around 11 o'clock, mountain locations only, really. And you get back towards the Tetons, Teton County, Wyoming, also in southeastern Idaho and southwestern Wyoming. Slight chance of moisture coming in for Sunday afternoon leading into Monday. Now, this is Sunday at 5 o'clock, and even here, most of the moisture around the Snake River Plain, east of the valley, pushing into the mountains, so I'm not counting on a lot of moisture for the Saturday and Sunday getting into the Snake River Plain itself. Patchy fog tonight, mostly sunny in the afternoon, light snow trying to work in for Sunday and Monday. Teens and 20s for the overnight lows, 16 in Mackay at around 12 at the site, 16 in Idaho Falls, 6 in Island Park with 14 for Driggs, 15 in St. Anthony, and into the 20s as you hang around Pocatello, American Falls, and Burley. Also looking at the 20s as you get around Malad and Preston, teens into Montpelier and Soda Springs, and 11 in Jackson Hole tonight. Temperatures tomorrow coming back into the 20s and 30s. Now, we're going to be just a few degrees cooler tomorrow, but we're still above average. 38 for Pocatello and Malad, 36 in American Falls, 36 in Blackfoot, mid-30s in Idaho Falls, pushing around the upper 20s for Jackson, lower 30s for Rexburg and Driggs, lower 30s in Island Park with 31 in Salmon, 35 for Mackay. The 8-day forecast, here we go. You're going to see temperatures here pushing into the mid-30s for the next couple of days in Idaho Falls. I want to stress a slight chance of snow. This is not going to be a major snowstorm coming in for the weekend. Around 37 for Sunday and 36 for Monday in Idaho Falls. Some mostly cloudy conditions for Tuesday and Wednesday. Pocatello highs here, upper 30s, lower 40s as we cruise into the weekend. We'll carry the upper 30s into Monday, mid-30s as we get into next week with a partly sunny sky. Not a lot of moisture with this system coming through, so we're not counting on a ton of snow here. Unless you're into the mountains, we have about a 40% chance of some good snow in Jackson, Island Park, and Salmon, with highs here into the mid to lower 30s for the high country, and overnight lows into the teens and 20s, and that's going to continue a little bit into next week as well. Carol, Jay?
Thank you, Mike. Here's what we're working on for Local News 8 at 6. A new app could change math literacy in the state of Idaho.
It's taking on one district at a time, starting with Bonneville Joint District 93. The app looks and feels just like any other game your children would play on their gaming device, but educators say this one is actually very useful.
Tonight at 6, we'll hear from the students and why one teacher says it has enhanced math scores for his entire class.
Well, you think about moving anytime soon? After the break, we'll show you which state was victorious on the list of top moving destinations.
Let's take a look at how the markets closed for the day. Hey, that's a good sign. We'll be right back. Oregon holds on to its title as the top moving destination. That's according to a study from United Van Lines. It tracked 128,000 moves. Oregon, the top moving destination of 2014. 66% of the moves to and from the state, most of them inbound. And then another popular destination state on the list would be South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and Vermont. Idaho ranks number 10.
Oh, pretty good.
That's not bad. New Jersey and New York had the highest percentage of people getting out. Moving
no
out.
big surprise there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't try to fill up your own gas tank in Oregon. You'll learn that the hard way.
That's right. That's illegal.
We've all been there.
That's right.
Temperatures into the 30s for tomorrow. If you want to go on a road trip, roads are looking pretty good, except for some fog. It's going to be very foggy once again around Bear Lake and places like Jackson. Patchy fog for tonight all across the area.
All right. Well, watch out for that. That's our report. Time now for ABC World News. We'll be back at 6.